I should have felt grateful, but instead, my heart reacted like a warning bell. Sometimes love feels warm. Sometimes it feels rehearsed. That day it felt staged. Amani appeared at my doorstep with a smile too polished to be real. Her arms wrapped around me before I could even process her arrival, her perfume sharp and unfamiliar against my neck. "Mama, you need a break. I booked everything. Alaska. A whole week." Her voice trembled, not with love, but with anticipation. I forced a smile. "Alaska? In winter? It's peaceful. You deserve peace." She wouldn't meet my eyes. Her words hovered between tenderness and something far colder. After years of distance, arguments, misunderstandings, long silences, her sudden affection felt like fabric pulled too tight over a secret. But I didn't question her. Not out loud. Inside, though, my thoughts spiraled like a snowstorm. The house felt heavier as I packed. My suitcase looked too empty for a week-long trip, but something in me resisted filling it. Maybe because I wasn't sure if I'd return. I watched Amani move around my living room, touching objects she used to ignore, my old vases, the faded family photos, the wooden carving her father bought before he passed. She ran her fingers over them, almost measuring. I swallowed hard. "You sure everything's okay?" I asked. Her smile froze. "Why wouldn't it be? I just want you to relax." Relax. She'd said it 3 times already, as if the word was scripted. When she hugged me again, I noticed how her hands trembled. Not the trembling of emotion, something else. A rush. A fear. A countdown. That night, sleep refused to visit me. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the echo of our old arguments. The apology she never gave. The harsh things she once said, things a daughter should never say to a mother. Was this trip her way of healing? Or hiding something? By dawn, I had convinced myself I was overthinking. Mothers do that. We fear shadows where there are none. But my chest still burned. At the airport, Amani fussed over me like a nurse with a bad conscience. She straightened my coat, tucked my scarf, pressed my shoulders gently. Too gently. "Mama, just rest. Don't stress. Don't call too much. Live for yourself." Her eyes softened for a moment. And for one small, fragile second, I saw the little girl I raised, messy-haired, stubborn, bright-eyed. Then the softness vanished. "Everything's already arranged for you. Just follow the plan." The plan. The words chilled me more than the wind blowing through the sliding airport doors. As I boarded the plane, a tiny voice inside whispered that something was deeply, deeply wrong. Still, I pushed through the narrow aisle, clutching my bag as if it held answers. When I finally sank into my seat, the overhead lights humming like distant static, my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. My breath snagged in my throat as I opened it. "Make sure she signs the papers before it's too late." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Papers? Sign what? Before what is too late? My heart thudded violently, louder than the engines beginning to roar beneath me. And just like that, the plane doors sealed shut, locking me into a trip I suddenly feared I wouldn't survive. The moment I stepped off the tiny plane, the cold slapped me like a truth I wasn't ready to face. It wasn't just weather, it felt like a warning. Snow stretched endlessly in every direction, untouched and unnervingly white. The sky hung low, heavy with clouds that seemed one good sigh away from collapsing on the world. I pulled my coat closer, but the chill pushed through it with ease, crawling straight into my bones. For a moment, I wondered if Amani had chosen this place not for my peace, but for my disappearance. A man waited near a dark wooden SUV, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a thick parka, with fur lining his hood. He raised a hand when he saw me, his smile too sure, too ready. "You must be her mother." His voice was deep, warm enough to seem welcoming, yet something in his eyes stayed unreadable. I hesitated. "And you are?" "Rowan." He stepped toward me, extending a gloved hand. "Your caretaker for the week." Amani told me everything. Everything. That word again. Spoken so casually, yet soaked in implication. My fingers stiffened around my suitcase handle. "Everything." I repeated. "Yes," he said, nodding gently. "She told me what you've been going through." A cold I couldn't blame on the snow wrapped around my spine. I hadn't told Amani anything about my recent struggles, my dizzy spells, my fatigue, the doctor visits I never completed. I'd hidden them from her on purpose. She never asked anyway. So what exactly had she told him? The drive to the lodge was quiet, except for the crunch of tires over frozen ground. Pines lined the road like silent guards, their branches sagging under pounds of snow. Here and there, distant mountains pierced the sky like jagged teeth. The isolation pressed into my chest with each passing mile. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Rowan asked. "It's something," I murmured. He chuckled softly. "You'll get used to the quiet. Most guests say it feels therapeutic." Guests. Plural. So others came here to disappear into the snow too. My reflection in the window looked pale, almost ghost-like against the endless white. When we pulled up to the lodge, I felt a strange déjà vu. A long, dark cabin stretched across the clearing, smoke curling from its chimney, warm against the icy air. Yet the atmosphere felt weighted, like the building was watching me as much as I was watching it. Inside, the warmth wrapped around me instantly, smelling faintly of pine wood, old books, and something earthy. Rowan lifted my bags effortlessly. "Your daughter said you might need help settling in. She was very concerned." The pause before that last word stabbed at me. I swallowed hard. "What exactly did she tell you?" He tilted his head, studying me with a faint frown. "She sent your medical file. Said you've been struggling and might need monitoring." My heart lurched. "Medical file?" "Yes." He shrugged as if this were normal. "It had your name on it." I grabbed the edge of the wooden counter to steady myself. "I didn't create any medical file." Rowan blinked. "But your daughter sent." "I don't care what she sent," I snapped, my voice rising sharper than I intended. "I never made a file." His expression shifted, just slightly, into unease. The fire crackled behind us, but the warmth no longer touched me. My skin prickled with dread. Because if Amani had fabricated documents once, what else had she created in my name? Rowan opened his mouth slowly, hesitating as if testing each word before speaking. "I think you should see it for yourself." His tone held something new, something dark. And in that moment, I realized the snow outside wasn't the only cold thing in Alaska. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was only looking for a blanket. But instead, I found proof my own daughter had prepared my death. The discovery felt like stepping on thin ice, silent, cracking, inevitable. After Rowan mentioned the medical file, I couldn't sit still. My skin buzzed with questions, but my fear kept swallowing the words I wanted to ask. So I pretended to settle in, moving slowly through the lodge, touching doors, opening drawers, trying to understand the place where my daughter had sent me to rest. The air inside the cabin carried a strange stillness, as if secrets lived inside the walls. Shadows clung to the corners, thick and unmoving. Every floorboard creaked like it was warning me to turn back. But I kept going. A small office sat at the end of a narrow hallway, dark wood walls, a desk cluttered with old maps, and a faint smell of dust. My fingers brushed along the tabletop, and that's when I saw it. A manila envelope. Unlabeled. Untouched. Or maybe awaiting. I don't know what made me open it. Curiosity. Fear. A mother's instinct to protect herself when her child no longer would. Inside, a stack of papers stared back at me. Thick pages. Crisp prints. Signatures that made my stomach twist. The first document was an insurance form, my name printed neatly across the top. The second was a medical release authorization, granting access to someone listed simply as primary relative. Amani's name. I whispered it like a prayer I no longer trusted. "Amani, what did you do?" Each page felt heavier than the last. But it was the will, the revised last testament, as it was titled, that turned my blood to ice. My signature was forged, almost perfectly. My handwriting imitated so well that, for a split second, I questioned my own memory. But the slant was wrong. The pressure inconsistent. The flourish at the end never mine. Amani's signature was bolder. Confident. Almost proud. A daughter expecting her mother wouldn't live long enough to read it. My throat tightened. I felt the room tilt slightly, like the lodge itself leaned in to listen. I flipped to the next page. My eyes skimmed down lines designed to erase me from my own life, allocations of assets, distribution of savings, the house, the jewelry, everything I worked for. All designated to Amani. All finalized upon natural death. Natural. The word stung more than any insult. Why would she do this? The whisper escaped before I could stop it. A cold draft slipped under the door, brushing against my ankles. The windows rattled faintly. Outside, snow piled higher, muting the world, burying sound. I kept reading page after page, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. And then I saw it. A single sentence near the bottom, tucked neatly beneath a line of legal jargon. The deceased passed peacefully during a winter accident. My hands began to shake. Winter accident. The words blurred and sharpened again, like my eyes refused to believe them. My death had been written, prepared, filed. A calm, cold ending scripted for me by my own child. My breath hitched painfully as the truth sliced through me. Amani never sent me here to rest. She sent me here to disappear. I pressed the will against my chest, trying to feel my heart beat through the paper, needing reassurance I was still alive. The lodge groaned under the weight of the storm outside, but another weight, heavier, more suffocating, pressed on me from within. Rowan might have known something. Amani definitely knew everything. And now I knew enough to be dangerous. But the final line of that forge will stuck to my thoughts like frostbite, refusing to let go. Died peacefully during a winter accident. Peaceful. They planned even the adjective. A chill deeper than the Alaskan wind crawled up my spine as I realized. The accident wasn't just written. It was scheduled. And I was already in the place where it was meant to happen. I've never felt fear settle so deeply in my bones, not even during childbirth, not even when I buried my husband. But discovering my own forge will made me realize something terrifying. My daughter no longer saw me as her mother, only as a liability. I paced the small cabin office, the papers still trembling in my hands. Each page felt heavier, louder, as if screaming a truth I had been too blind or too hopeful to see. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to pretend I still believed in her. So I dialed her number. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Mama, you reached safely." Her tone was wrong. Flat. Uninterested. Like I was a neighbor calling to return a borrowed bowl, not her mother checking in from an isolated corner of Alaska. "Yes," I said quietly. "The lodge is peaceful." A lie. The place felt like a coffin waiting for its occupant. "That's good," she replied too quickly. "You should rest. Actually, stay longer. Another week would do you good." Another week. As in, more time to finalize whatever plan she'd orchestrated? I swallowed hard, forcing my voice into something calm. "I don't know if I need extra time." "You do." Her tone sharpened suddenly, as if cracking through the fake gentleness. "You've been tense. Tired. You deserve a break." The tenderness she tried to imitate scraped against my ears, brittle and false. I glanced at the forged will lying open on the desk. "Amani, did you send anything to the caretaker?" My voice cracked despite my efforts to control it. She hesitated. A single breath. Too long. Too calculating. "What do you mean?" "I mean any paperwork." Her inhale was sharp but contained, as if she'd been caught off guard and was scrambling to recover. "Mama, I'm just trying to take care of you. Why are you asking so many questions?" Her defensiveness sliced straight through me. The daughter who once cried into my arms now sounded like a stranger guarding a plan. "I found something," I whispered. "Some files. The medical forms, insurance, a will." Silence. Then her voice frosted over. "Those are just standard things. I was helping you, like any daughter would." "No daughter forges her mother's signature," I said, my throat tightening. She exhaled shakily, but not in guilt. In irritation. "You're overreacting. You always do this, turn everything into a problem." Her words struck me harder than the cold outside. There it was. The distance. The resentment. The buried anger she'd nursed for years. "I just want to understand," I managed. "Just stay there, Mama. Trust me. You need to rest in the snow. It's good for you." Rest in the snow. The phrasing gnawed at my nerves. Almost poetic. Almost rehearsed. My mind replayed the line from the forged will. Died peacefully during a winter accident. Peacefully. Winter. Snow. Everything aligned like teeth in a predator's jaw. "I miss you," I whispered, because part of me still did, even if missing her felt like missing a ghost. She didn't say it back. Instead, "I have to go. I'm busy. Just stay another week, okay? Don't rush back." My breath hitched. Her words weren't a suggestion. They were a warning disguised as advice. "Okay," I lied softly. I could almost hear her relief. There it was, the truth, hidden in the way she exhaled, in the subtle shift of her voice, in the cold triumph that flickered beneath her layers of pretend concern. She wanted me gone. Erased. Forgotten under a blanket of snow. Just as she was about to hang up, a faint noise filtered through the line. A door closing. Footsteps. Then a man's voice, low and impatient. Did she suspect anything? My heart slammed against my ribs. Amani didn't answer him, but the silence was enough. I knew Rowan was hiding something, but I never expected it to feel like a blade slipping quietly between my ribs. His truth landed with the heaviness of a confession he'd been choking on. He found me sitting near the window that afternoon, the snow outside falling in soft, deceptive sheets. The lodge was silent, almost too still, as if the walls were waiting to hear what he'd finally say. I sensed a shift in him before he opened his mouth, his shoulders tense, his eyes avoiding mine, his breaths shallow. "I need to tell you something," he murmured, and my pulse tightened. I didn't trust my voice enough to answer. Instead, I simply nodded, letting him speak. He stepped closer, lowering himself onto the chair across from me. For a moment, he stared at his gloved hands, rubbing his thumb against the seam, as though trying to erase what he was about to admit. "I wasn't hired to protect you," he said softly. "I was hired to watch you." The words hit me like a frozen gust slicing straight through my coat. I blinked, waiting for the rest, some explanation that would make this sound less cruel than it was. But he didn't give me one. Instead, he looked at me with a strange mixture of shame and something like compassion. "Watch me for what?" I whispered. He swallowed. "To report your routines. Who you talk to. How you move. When you're alone." My throat tightened. The room felt smaller, shadows lengthening against the dim light. I forced myself to stay steady, though panic licked at the edges of my ribs. "Who hired you?" I asked. He hesitated. "That part I only learned recently," he admitted. A cold tremor spread through me. "Then why tell me now?" He lifted his gaze finally, and I saw it, an ache that didn't belong to this place or this moment. A memory. A wound. "Because I've seen this before," he said, voice low. "My mother. She got caught in something similar. People pretending to care, pretending to look out for her, pretending everything was normal." His jaw tightened as he exhaled shakily. "I didn't save her, and I can't watch it happen again." The confession cracked something inside him. And strangely, something inside me too. I didn't know Rowan, at least not enough to trust him, but grief recognized grief. Pain recognized its own shape, even in strangers. He reached into his coat slowly, as if he expected me to flinch. Instead, I froze, watching his hand emerge with a small USB drive, black, unmarked, chillingly ordinary. He placed it on the table between us like an offering. "These are emails," he said, "between your daughter and someone else." The world stuttered. "Amani. My Amani." My heart stumbled painfully in my chest. "How did you get these?" I asked, my voice barely holding together. His expression tightened again. "I shouldn't have. But once I saw her name, I couldn't ignore it." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the soft hiss of wind slipping against the window pane. I stared at the USB, my hands trembling though. I kept them in my lap, trying to hide the quake running through my bones. Rowan leaned forward slightly. "I don't know the full plan," he said, "but someone wanted you isolated up here. Someone wanted you off guard." My breath hitched. "Why?" He shook his head. "The emails might answer that." I reached for the drive with unsteady fingers, the cold plastic biting against my skin. A part of me wanted to throw it into the fire, pretend none of this existed, pretend my daughter could never be part of something dark. But the other part, the part that had felt her distance, her coldness, knew better. That night, with trembling hands, I opened the last email. It read, "Everything is ready. The cliff behind the lodge is unstable. Make it look natural." My blood turned to ice. I never knew silence could feel like a threat. But as I stepped outside that morning, the air itself felt like it wanted to push me somewhere I wouldn't return from. The USB's final email kept echoing in my mind, its words turning my stomach into a tight, trembling knot. I couldn't stay inside the lodge any longer, not with the walls pressing in, not with Rowan pacing like a man afraid of his own shadow. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The cliff, the one they wanted to use to erase me. So I followed the narrow trail behind the lodge, its path half swallowed by fresh snow, its edges uneven and treacherous. The wind bit at my cheeks, sharp and unforgiving, as though trying to warn me to turn back. But I couldn't. I had to know if the danger was real or just paranoia tightening its grip. Each step made a soft crunch, the sound too loud in the emptiness. Snow-dusted pines towered above me, swaying slightly in the cold breath of the mountain. My hands were shaking inside my gloves, and I couldn't tell if it was the cold or fear or something deeper, something more like mourning. When the trees finally thinned, I saw it. The cliff. Steep. Icy. Lethal. The edge was jagged and unstable, coated in a thin sheen of frost that glittered deceptively in the dull winter light. It was beautiful the way a loaded gun could be beautiful from the outside. A hush settled over the clearing, the kind that sinks deep into your bones and makes you feel like you're standing somewhere forbidden. My breath clouded in front of me as I stepped closer. The wind carried the faint rumble of shifting ice from below, tiny fractures, small slides, the warning signs of something ready to give way. It wouldn't take much. Just one misstep, one push, and someone had planned for exactly that. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat sharp and uneven. I scanned the ground, expecting smooth snow untouched by human presence, but instead I saw them, faint, irregular footprints. Not one pair. Two, maybe three. Some close to the edge, some circling back. Whoever had come here hadn't been admiring the view. They'd been testing it, preparing it, waiting. My throat tightened as a memory flashed sharply through me, like a shard of glass cutting through the fog. Amani's voice, soft but tired. Tired in a way children shouldn't be with their mothers. If you weren't around, my life would be easier. I remembered the sting of those words, the way they hollowed me out from the inside. I'd laughed it off then, tried to turn it into a joke, tried to convince myself she didn't mean it. But now, standing at the edge of a cliff someone wanted me to fall from, it echoed differently. Heavier, darker, true. A breath slipped out of me shakily. No, I whispered to myself. She wouldn't do this. She couldn't. But the wind didn't answer. The mountain didn't care. And the footprints told their own story. I crouched down, brushing gloved fingers over the impressions, feeling the depth, noticing how some prints faced outward, toward the drop, as if someone had stood right at the very edge, testing how far they could lean before the ground crumbled beneath them. My stomach twisted violently. Someone had been planning this for days. I straightened slowly, letting the reality settle, like a heavy cloak around my shoulders. I wasn't imagining things. This wasn't a misunderstanding or an accidental discovery blown out of proportion. They wanted me gone. Silently, cleanly, conveniently. An accidental fall. A death no one would question. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. For the first time since arriving at this lodge, I truly felt hunted. Exposed. A fragile thing standing on the wrong part of the mountain. I wrapped my arms around myself and took one step back from the cliff. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching in the snow right behind me. I should have run. But fear has a way of freezing your feet before it ever touches your heart. The footsteps behind me grew clearer, crunching through the snow with unhurried confidence. Whoever it was, they weren't afraid of being heard. I turned slowly, trying to steady my breath, and that's when I saw him. A man. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dressed in an expensive wool coat that didn't match the rugged wilderness around us. He smiled at me, calm, polite, almost charming. But the smile never reached his eyes. Those eyes were sharp, assessing, the kind that studied you like a problem they'd already solved. "Mrs. Hale," he said, as if greeting an old friend. "Finally we meet." Cold washed down my spine. "Who are you?" He stepped closer, boots sinking into the snow with deliberate slowness. "Khalid," he said, "your daughter's boyfriend." I blinked, the name hitting me like a slap. Amani never mentioned any boyfriend. Not a single hint. Not even a vague mention of someone new in her life. "My daughter doesn't have a boyfriend," I said, though my voice trembled. His smile stretched a little wider. "Oh, she does. She just knows how you get. Emotional. Suspicious. Hard to convince." He said it gently, but each word felt like a shove. The way he spoke about me, so familiar, so informed, it made my stomach twist. "How do you know anything about me?" I whispered. Khalid tilted his head, as if amused by the question. "Amani talks. A lot. Especially when she's stressed." I felt a sting near my ribs, a sudden tightness in my chest. Stressed. My daughter had been stressed. Because of me? Because of debts? Because of what? Or because of what she was planning? He took another step, erasing the space between us. I could see the faint smudge of stubble on his jaw, the frost clinging to his eyebrows, the slight curve of satisfaction in his lips. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said quietly. "It's dangerous. Slippery. Accidents happen. His eyes flicked toward the cliff behind me, just for a split second, but it was enough to confirm everything Rowan had warned me about. You planned this, I breathed. Both of you. Khalid didn't flinch. Planned. He shrugged lightly. I prefer to think of it as problem-solving. My pulse hammered. I could hear the distant groan of ice shifting beneath the cliff. The wind cut through my coat, stinging my skin. What do you want? I asked. The question made him chuckle softly, as if this entire moment was a minor inconvenience. What everyone wants, he said. Security. A future. A chance to breathe. He paused, letting the words hang between us. And your money helps with that. There it was, finally spoken aloud. The truth I'd been dancing around since the moment I found those forged papers. My money. I whispered. Khalid nodded. Amani's been carrying some heavy burdens. Debts. Mistakes. Casino people aren't known for their patience. He sighed almost theatrically. We needed a solution. A clean one. My throat tightened to the point of pain. You're lying, I said. My daughter would never be part of this. He laughed softly just once. A short, cruel sound. She already is. The world tilted. For a moment, I stopped feeling the cold, the fear, even the wind. All I felt was betrayal tightening around every bone inside me. She's your daughter, he added casually. But blood doesn't fix everything. Sometimes it just makes the mess harder to clean up. Stop, I whispered. Please. He studied me, eyes narrowing slightly, as if deciding something in his mind. You could have made this so much easier, he said. All you had to do was sign. My breath hitched. Sign what? His expression softened into something almost pitying. The papers, he murmured. The ones you weren't supposed to find. He moved closer again, slow and deliberate. Snowflakes gathered on his coat, melting against the heat of his breath. Then he leaned in, his voice a whisper dripping with finality. You should have signed the papers when you had the chance. And with that, he took one more step toward me, and the cliff behind my heels waited. The storm hit without warning, swallowing the world in white and leaving fear exposed in its wake. The wind rattled the lodge's windows like a living thing, cold and insistent. Outside, the snow fell so thick it erased the forest. Inside, something darker was falling too, betrayal, anger, and a sense that nothing would ever be the same. I stayed near the basement door at first, hesitant, listening. Footsteps and voices above me carried through the wooden floors. Khalid's calm demeanor had cracked during the last moments on the cliff. Now trapped by the snowstorm, I heard it, an edge of temper, sharp and dangerous. Rowan tried to intervene. Khalid, it doesn't have to go this far, he said, his voice low but tense. Khalid laughed, a sound that felt more like a threat than amusement. Don't lecture me. You think you're protecting her? You're just part of the game. Rowan's jaw tightened. I'm trying to protect her mother. Her mother, Khalid spat, almost mockingly, is in the way. Always has been. The argument escalated, each word a blade, each pause a threat. The tension clung to the walls of the lodge, like smoke. I pressed myself against the basement stairs, trying not to breathe too loud, trying to disappear. My hands shook as I fumbled with the USB drive Rowan had given me. I couldn't stay hidden forever, but the storm made moving upstairs a risk too dangerous to take. I slid the drive into the laptop I had brought, barely letting my fingers touch the keys. The emails scrolled across the screen, like a confession from my daughter I'd never wanted to read. Each message was worse than the last, meticulously detailed, months of planning. Amani had orchestrated this from the beginning. The lodge, the snow, the forged will, even Khalid. Every step I had feared was intentional, scripted in advance. One email was time-stamped 6 months ago. We need her isolated. She can't interfere. The cabin in Alaska is perfect. I've booked everything for next winter. My chest ached. My daughter had mapped out my disappearance long before I even knew something was wrong. Long before I suspected betrayal, she had decided I would be gone. I read on, eyes stinging with tears, stomach twisting, as another email described the cliff, the slippery paths, the exact conditions to make an accident look natural. Each word, each detail, confirmed the depth of her cold precision. I felt the ground beneath me tilt, even as I crouched on the basement floor. The storm outside rattled the lodge, and somewhere above, the argument between Khalid and Rowan reached a breaking point. Furniture scraped against the floor, glass rattled. The tension pressed down like the weight of snow on the roof. I barely noticed the cold anymore. I was trembling from more than the winter air. The realization that my daughter had orchestrated my near death, controlled the people around me, and manipulated circumstances months in advance made my heart pound with both fear and sorrow. I tucked my knees to my chest, trying to quiet myself, trying to breathe through the panic. I had survived the cliff, the emails, the betrayal, but the night was far from over. Every shadow seemed alive. Every groan of a lodge sounded like a step closer, a hand reaching for me in the dark. Then, the unmistakable sound of a door slamming upstairs. My pulse stopped. I froze. And then I heard it. A voice. Not Khalid's. Not Rowan's. Amani. She had come to Alaska. The blood drained from my face as the realization settled. The mastermind herself, the daughter I had once loved without question, was now here, watching, waiting, and ready to see if her plan would succeed. The storm howled outside, but inside, something colder than snow swept through me. She was here, and I had nowhere to run. I should have run the moment I heard her voice. But the sound of her, soft yet charged with authority, froze me in place. The basement felt smaller than ever, walls pressing in as if the lodge itself leaned toward her. My chest tightened, my breath shallow, and for a moment I thought the snowstorm outside had nothing on the storm inside. Amani's footsteps descended, deliberate, steady. Each one echoed in the wooden stairwell like a drumbeat of inevitability. I pressed my back against the cold concrete, the laptop with the emails pressed against my chest, shielding me as much as it revealed the truth I was too afraid to fully accept. She appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her figure sharp against the dim basement light. Snow clung to her coat, dampened strands of hair framing a face I barely recognized. Her eyes, once warm, once familiar, were hollow. Exhausted, hardened. The softness I remembered from childhood had been replaced by something else entirely. Greed, calculation, and a sense of entitlement that cut me deeper than any blade. "Mama, you really don't understand, do you?" Her voice was calm, almost conversational, but each word dripped with accusation. I shook my head, unable to form words. "You ruined my life. You held back what was mine. Everything I deserved." She gestured vaguely at the space around us, as if the entire world had been stealing from her. "All because you were too selfish to give it to me." I swallowed hard. My throat burned with the weight of unsaid apologies of the years I thought I had done right. "Amani, I gave you everything I could," I whispered. "Everything I had." Her laughter, quiet and bitter, echoed in the basement. "Everything you had. Everything I wanted was never enough. You controlled it, you hid it, you kept me small." Her tone hardened. "And now, I'm done waiting." I took a step back. The emails, the cliff, Khalid, Rowan, every warning now converged into a cold, clear truth. She had planned this. She had orchestrated it all. Months, years of resentment and calculation, neatly wrapped and waiting for this moment. "Amani, please. You don't have to do this. We can fix this." My voice cracked despite the careful calm I tried to project. Her expression didn't change. Cold, calculating, emotionless. I realized then that the daughter I had known, the one who had cried in my arms, had been replaced by someone I could no longer recognize. "Fix this," she said softly, almost like a teacher correcting a mistake. "You've had your chance, Mama. I've waited long enough for mercy." My chest ached. Betrayal settled over me like frostbite. Every memory of her small hand in mine, every bedtime story, every hug, it all felt like a lie now. Or perhaps it had never been real. I glanced around the basement. Hiding wouldn't help. There was nowhere to go. The storm outside trapped us. The walls trapped us. And now Amani herself had cornered me. She stepped closer. I felt the chill of her presence, the quiet menace behind her movements. My pulse hammered in my ears. The warmth I had once known in her embrace was gone, replaced by a calculated determination that left me shaking. "I wanted to give you a chance, Mama." Her hand moved slowly toward her coat. "But you left me no choice." I froze. Something metallic glinted as she drew it out. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. And in that moment, all the betrayal, all the cold months of planning, all the deception, seemed to condense into a single, shimmering object held in her hand. She held it like a promise, like a judgment, and I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that the next move would decide everything. The storm outside screamed against the lodge. Inside, only silence answered, until she moved it slowly toward me. I never thought snow could feel so heavy. But under our feet, it groaned and shifted like a warning we refused to hear. The cliff loomed beside us, icy and jagged, the wind cutting through every layer of clothing and every shred of reason I had left. Amani's eyes were wild, furious, rage blinding her completely. She lunged at me, hands clutching, anger and desperation fused into a single, terrifying force. "You ruined everything," she screamed, her voice slicing through the storm. I stumbled backward, struggling to hold her off. Her strength surprised me, the same girl who once needed me to tie her shoes, now wielding fury like a weapon. "Amani, stop. Please." I yelled, but she didn't hear me, not really. Footsteps thundered behind us. Khalid appeared, his face red from cold and anger, shouting something I couldn't quite catch over the wind. His presence was magnetic, pulling the chaos together and amplifying it. I realized too late that he didn't come to help. He came to push events toward their conclusion. Rowan arrived next, sliding down the slope, arms outstretched. "Stop. Both of you hold on." His voice was desperate, full of guilt and fear, and for a moment I thought maybe we could all survive this. But the snow beneath our feet wasn't patient. It whispered, creaked, and groaned, warning us of a fragile balance we'd ignored. Every step closer to the cliff's edge made the ice tremble. My stomach turned with every subtle crack. Amani struggled violently, her rage fueling her strength. She twisted, trying to push me back. "This is your fault. You never gave me a choice." Her words were a knife, slicing through every memory of tenderness I had clung to, and yet, in her scream, I saw her. Not the scheming adult who had plotted against me, but the child she used to be, the little girl who once clutched my hand in fear of the dark, the girl whose laughter used to fill our house. I reached for her, desperate to find that child, to hold on to the memory that kept me tethered to hope. But she resisted, thrashing in anger and grief. "Mama, I hate you." The snow cracked sharply under her boots, a sound that sent icy dread up my spine. The edge of the cliff shifted beneath us, the ice groaning like an animal warning of collapse. My pulse raced as I saw it, the first slip. Amani's scream cut through everything. Her foot had caught in a weak patch, and the snow beneath her gave way. She toppled, arms flailing, her body sliding toward the void. My heart seized. "No! Amani!" I shouted, lunging forward. Time slowed. I saw the child she was, her small hand once clasped in mine, the warmth of her hugs, the softness of her voice. And then I saw the woman she had become, cold, calculating, relentless in her desire to punish me. Both versions of her existed in this moment, and my hand hovered between past and present, love and fear. Khalid's shouts rang through the storm. "Grab her! She can't!" Rowan scrambled closer, his hands reaching desperately. "Hold on! Don't let go!" I stretched every muscle, every fiber of my being, fingers brushing hers. The snow beneath us creaked ominously, shifting again with a sound that made my stomach drop. She screamed, the sound piercing, raw, and I froze. I could save her, or I could let her fall. The wind tore at my hair, the storm roared like a living thing, and I hung suspended in the moment, hand outstretched, heart pounding, unsure whether to fight for her life, or accept the consequences of the daughter she had chosen to become. And in that frozen, heart-stopping instant I realized everything we had ever been, everything we had ever meant to each other, rested in the fragile grasp of her hand. She's alive, but the sight of her lying on the snow, one leg twisted, eyes wide with pain and shock, nearly broke me in half. The storm had faded to a brittle, gray morning, leaving the lodge and the cliff in a haunting silence. I pressed a trembling hand to her arm, my own guilt heavier than the snow pressing against my boots. How had it come to this? How had my daughter, the girl I had raised, the child who once needed me, become someone who tried to orchestrate my death? Rowan's voice cut through the haze, firm yet shaky. "I've contacted the authorities. They're on their way. Everything, emails, forged documents, witness notes, it's all being documented. The lodge is now a crime scene." I nodded numbly, barely registering his words. The weight of betrayal pressed down harder than any winter storm I'd ever faced. The papers I'd discovered, the emails I had read in the basement, they weren't just plans. They were proof. Months of plotting. A life built around resentment, greed, and a plan to end mine. I looked at Amani. She tried to sit up, biting back a scream, her face contorted in pain. The leg injury didn't matter to her pride. She still tried to fix her expression, still tried to meet my eyes with something like defiance. But the veneer was cracking. "How long?" I whispered. My voice trembled. "How long have you hated me?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't answer at first. Then, faintly, she muttered almost to herself, since you never gave me what I deserved." The confession stabbed at my chest. Every sleepless night, every moment I thought I had done my best, it had never been enough. The inheritance, the attention, the love, I had assumed they were enough, but she had always measured me by what I withheld. Rowan handed me a folder filled with photocopies of emails and contracts. "Here. Look. Everything is documented. Bribed witnesses. Threats. Plans. You don't have to imagine anymore. This is all real." I sat down on the icy ground, shivering despite my coat. Leafing through the folder, every page confirmed it. The debts she had hidden, the lies she had spun, the steps she had taken to manipulate everyone around her. Khalid's involvement, her cold precision, the calculated way she had drawn me here. I felt sick, betrayed, exposed. But there was relief, too. Relief that the truth was out, that no longer would I be haunted by doubt, by uncertainty, by the nagging fear that I had imagined her malice. The sirens came first, faint, then closer. Flashing lights painted the snow in urgent red and blue. Officers moved swiftly, documenting, photographing, questioning. The lodge became a scene of procedure, of facts and evidence. Reality had replaced terror with accountability. One officer knelt beside me, notebook in hand. "Ma'am, you've seen the documents, the emails, the evidence. Do you want to press full charges or let her go?" I froze. I looked at my daughter, injured, still defiant, still my child, in some fragile, distant way. My chest tightened with a mixture of sorrow, rage, and disbelief. Every instinct told me to protect her, even after everything. Every instinct whispered that justice demanded consequence. I swallowed hard, staring into her eyes, searching for the girl I had loved, the woman she had become, and wondering which truth would shape the future. And then the words hovered in my throat, impossible and heavy. The choice was mine. I never thought justice could feel like mercy. But as I watched Amani escorted into the police vehicle, her head bowed, I realized that sometimes survival isn't about punishment. It's about choosing what kind of mother you want to be. The snow had melted slightly, leaving the lodge's edges slick and slushy, reflecting the harsh morning light. The storm had passed, but the tension lingered, a residue of fear and betrayal that clung to my skin. I felt it too, inside, a hollow ache that refused to fade. Rowan stood beside me, silent for once, letting me absorb the quiet aftermath. He had saved us both, his courage and loyalty unmatched. "She'll face the consequences," he said softly, almost reluctantly. "Therapy, restitution, separation from Khalid." I nodded, the weight of that decision settling over me like shroud. I didn't want her completely broken. I wanted her to understand, to feel the cost of her choices without losing the chance to grow, to change, to survive herself. Her betrayal had carved deep scars into my heart, yet I found myself breathing lighter than I had in weeks. The fear, the paranoia, the endless questions about who to trust, they were fading, replaced by clarity. I realized that life was no longer a game to be controlled, no longer a trap waiting to spring. It was mine to claim again. The authorities moved efficiently, documenting every piece of evidence, emails, forged documents, witness statements. Khalid had been arrested, his involvement undeniable. His calm, predatory demeanor shattered under the weight of facts. I felt no satisfaction in that, not really. Relief, yes. Safety, yes. But satisfaction? That would have required cruelty, and I refused to let anger dictate my heart. I walked the perimeter of the lodge one last time, boots crunching softly in the slushy snow. The world felt muted, stripped down to its essential truths. The cliff still loomed nearby, jagged and silent, a reminder of what had nearly been lost and what had been survived. I thought of Amani, lying injured yet alive, her face a mixture of pain and defiance. The child I had once held in my arms had become someone I barely recognized, yet the bond, the fragile, painful bond, remained. I could see the lessons she had forced me to learn, the resilience I had discovered in myself. I pulled out a pen and a sheet of paper, my hands steady despite the cold. The words came slowly, deliberately, each one a release, a confession, and a gift. You tried to end my life, but you taught me how to finally live it. I folded the letter carefully, sealing it with a quiet resolve. It was not a plea, nor an accusation. It was a statement of survival, of understanding, and of choice. I would let the system handle her consequences. I would let her face the path she had chosen. But I would no longer carry the weight of hatred or fear. The mail slot swallowed the letter, and with it, a piece of my burden. I exhaled a long, shuddering breath, feeling a strange lightness seep into my bones. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to look forward instead of constantly over my shoulder. Alaska receded behind me as I drove away, white peaks fading into gray horizon. I was changed. Colder in some ways, wiser in others, but somehow lighter. The mountains, the storm, the betrayal, they had tried to shape me into someone broken. Instead, I was choosing a mother I had never realized I could be. And in that choice, I finally felt the quiet power of survival, not just living, but truly living. The road stretched ahead, endless and open. And for the first time, I smiled without fear.